And hello everyone, this is Andy Serwich and thank you for tuning in to today's screencast. So in one of my previous posts on Windows Server Core, we kind of learned what Server Core is and what the benefits are for implementing it in your organization. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a screencast on kind of the basic configuration of Server Core. A lot of IT pros I've talked to, they don't really know how to get it set up, how to use it, so I'm going to be covering that today. So, the basic installation procedure, if you've installed 2012 or 2012 R2 recently, you'll notice that the default installation method is Server Core. Now, most people end up selecting the GUI and installing the GUI, but it's just as simple as installing the GUI. You just select Server Core mode and you go on your way. So, I have a freshly built Server 2012 R2 core box. And kind of very similar to the GUI mode, you're presented with, want to reset the password upon first boot. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set up the local admin password here. And it's going to go ahead and log me in. Now, here's where most IT administrators get the deer in the headlight look. This is Server Core. Like I said in my previous post, it's really a stripped down GUI. You don't have Windows Explorer, you don't have Internet Explorer, you don't have all those things that are typically vulnerable to attack like you do in the full GUI. That is definitely one of the benefits of Server Core, one of my personal favorite benefits. So really all you're going to have is a command prompt and a couple basic system tools that I'm going to go into here now. So, get your basic command prompt, and you can type things in there and issue basic commands like you would any other command prompt. But we do have a couple graphical utilities available to us. Things like Task Manager. I can type the usual Task Manager command and actually bring up Task Manager. And I get all my typical performance metrics, user details, services, all that fun stuff. So if you're troubleshooting an issue, you need to see what the box is doing, Task Manager is still available to you. One other system tool that's available is Notepad. This is particularly useful if you're dealing with any PowerShell scripts directly on the console of the Server Core box. So you certainly have Notepad at your disposal if you need to jot down a few things while you're working on it. And we also have PowerShell. So, if you're not learning PowerShell at this point in time, you should start. Everything you hear from Microsoft is really pushing PowerShell, and PowerShell is really helpful to us in those situations where we're running Server Core. It's not the sole system administration utility for Server Core, so don't worry if you don't know PowerShell yet, but it certainly helps. So, what I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to use PowerShell to just install a role, install a basic Windows feature. I'm going to install the multipath IO role, just as an example. So I'm going to do my basic syntax for PowerShell here. First thing I want to do is I want to get a list of all the current roles that are installed on the machine, and all the available roles too that can be installed. So I'm just going to issue a get Windows feature, and it's going to return a big long list of features and roles. Any second. Just thinking about it. There we go. Alright. So, as you can see, I get my big long list of features. So this gives you a nice list of the roles and features that are currently installed in the box. I can see I've got the file and storage services role installed. I got .NET Framework 4.5. Really, with a fresh build of Server Core, there's not much installed out of the box. So, sometimes it's a pain to try and figure out the name of the role that you want to install. So I'm going to pare this down a little bit. I'm just going to issue a string of text afterwards, star multi-star, because I know the word multi is in the name of the feature I want. And there we go. It returns the multipath IO support. I don't need the multicasting support, but I need the multipath IO. So I'm just going to issue a install Windows feature multipath IO, and it's going to go ahead and install that role for me. Now this might take a second, being as this is just on a test box with not the fastest storage available, but it's a relatively small feature, so it shouldn't take that long. Now, even though I'm installing this with PowerShell, this role could have been installed via Windows Server 2012, 2012 R2 Server Manager remotely, and I will be covering that procedure in an upcoming screencast, so stay tuned for that one. But for the purposes of this example and this demonstration, I'm just going to use PowerShell because it's quicker in this situation. So now I've got the multipath I/O role installed. No restart is needed. Exit code was a success, so everything is all fine and dandy. At this point, I've got the features that I want installed. There's a great tool at this point that I can use to complete the basic configuration of this machine. A tool called sconfig. Basically, is a simple menu-driven wizard to do all the basic administration tasks for this machine. Basically, this will allow us to get the machine to a point to where it is fully remotely manageable. So as you can see, got a numbered list of all the basic things. Domain work group. I'm not going to do that yet because I want to give the computer a name. So I'm just going to go ahead and name this lab FS01. I may end up turning this into a file server later, so I'm going to go ahead and restart the machine. And you see all my lovely games and everything there. Let me get the VM back up here while it's doing its thing. It's rebooting right now. And we get this back over here. And the machine should be just about back up. The thing you'll find with Server Core is, at least I think it boots a little bit quicker than the standard GUI does. The machine is down and back up so quick that it's rather nice. So we should be just about set here. There we go. And I'm going to close that out here and open up full screen again so you guys can get a little bit better view of what's going on here. So, machine is rebooted. I'm going to go ahead and log back in. And sconfig once again. So we've named our machine. You can see the new name here. I can proceed to number 3. I can add a local admin if I want. Not going to at this point. Configure remote management. So that remote management capabilities that I was talking about earlier with Server Manager 2012 and 2012 R2, this feature has to be enabled, which by default it is. So that's one thing that you're definitely going to want to make sure is enabled. You know, you can set up automatic Windows updates from here if you want with option 5. I'm going to leave it as manual at this point in time. You can download and install updates with option 6. And you can either search for all updates or recommended. Just because of the time involved in doing that, I'm not going to do so now. But that is how you would run local updates on this machine. I'm going to cancel that. Remote desktop. I want remote desktop enabled so I can still RDP into this environment without having to be on the console. So I'm going to go ahead and enable that. And gives you the options of whether you want network level authentication or all remote desktop agents to connect. I'm going to select network level authentication. And it just kind of confirms what's going on there. And we've got our network settings. And we can configure that now. As you can see, by default, the adapter is going to try and pull DHCP. I don't have DHCP on this particular lab network at this point in time, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to assign a static address. So I would select the index number of the NIC that I want to set the settings for. In this option, I only have a single NIC. So I select index number 10. I want to set the network adapter address. And I'm going to set a static address. And just give it a random address in the range. 57 is the first number I thought of, and I'm pretty sure it's open. And set my default gateway. Now, you'll notice that it didn't ask me for DNS. That's because option 2 is for configuring your DNS servers. You actually have to do that separate, and I will do that now. Actually, I'm just going to go with public DNS for now. That's all I need for the purposes of this demonstration. 8.8.8.8 is Google Public DNS for those that don't know. And you can define a secondary if you want. I'm not going to in this situation, so I'm just going to hit enter to continue on. Return to the main menu, and I always like to exit out to command line, option 15, and just make sure I can ping out after I've made my changes, which I can, so we're good to go there. I'm going to go back into sconfig and continue on down my list. So, option 9 brings up the date and time configuration. All I need to do is change my time zone. I am in the Eastern time zone. Hit OK, and OK. So that's all taken care of. You can participate in the customer experience improvement program if you'd like to. If you'd like to send all that helpful information to Microsoft. I'm not going to in this particular case. Number 11, the all-important Windows activation. You can install a product key with option 3, or if you've already got your product key put in, you hit activate Windows. In this case, I'm running the 180-day eval version, so I'm just going to hit activate Windows, and it will actually communicate out and update the activate the OS. Wait for that to do so here. Usually doesn't take very long. Alright, product activated successfully. So I'm going to close that window, and I'm going to hit option 1 to verify that license status is licensed, and it's got a time-based activation of 180 days for the time-based eval. So I'm going to close that window, return to the main menu, and we've pretty much been through our list here. The only other option I didn't go into was the actual joining of a domain, which you just hit option 1, and you can either change the workgroup or join the domain. And if you selected the domain option, it would just simply ask you for an authorized username and password upon hitting the letter D for the domain option. So I'm not going to go forward with that at this time. So at this point, we're pretty much done with sconfig. At this point, the server is in a state that we can manage all of it remotely with the MMC snap-ins and 2012 R2 Server Manager. So at this point, I'm going to exit back to the command line. And, nope, wrong script. That was another script I was working on the other day. So, a couple other things I wanted to cover here after sconfig. For those situations where you're running server core on a Hyper-V machine, you may want to configure some sort of shared storage, or in most cases, some sort of iSCSI connection. So the reason I installed the multipath I/O role is I wanted to explain how you get to the iSCSI configuration utility and how you get to the MPIO configuration utility. Because when we're in those situations where we're dealing with iSCSI, we definitely need to be able to get to the tools that allow us to configure those. So, in this case, the first thing I need to get to is the iSCSI configuration, which is just iSCSI CPL is the command that you need to issue. So, upon entering the command, the first thing it's going to tell you is that, hey, the iSCSI service is not running. Are you sure you want to run it? Do you want to start the service now and have the service start automatically each time the computer restarts? In this case, I'm going to select yes. And what it'll do, it'll set the service type to automatic, so it starts every time, and then it will actually launch the utility. And here are your initiator properties. So you can set up your discovery targets, the screen for your target connections, favorite targets, everything that you usually deal with iSCSI is right here. So then after you make these target connections, you could either use dispart via the command line to format and configure those iSCSI connections, or you could remotely use Server Manager to format and connect to those volumes, which I will discuss in another screencast. So I'm going to hit cancel there. The other piece of iSCSI, as most of us know, is MPIO. We definitely want to utilize that multipathing wherever possible. So very much kind of the same command. Instead of iSCSI CPL, it's just going to be MPIO CPL. And that brings up the MPIO properties. And you'll see most of the typical settings that you're used to seeing. So that gives you your shared storage capabilities inside Server Core. So basically we've covered all the basics of getting your Server Core box enabled, configured, and getting it to a point to where you can remotely manage it. We've also shown you how to get your storage connected, and basically all the main system utilities that you'd use for troubleshooting locally on the box. So be sure to stay tuned. I've got more content on this subject coming forth. We're going to be covering some of the ongoing management tasks, some troubleshooting, and some more advanced options with Server Core. So stay tuned, and thanks for listening. Have a good one.